ancient Roman domain was taken over by Christianity within a few centuries after a guy in the Middle East, in Israel, walked the sands of the Sea of Galilee named Jesus. And we have to wonder, like, how did Christianity take over the whole Roman domain? Well, there's a number of good reasons for this. I mean, obviously, culturally, the breakdown of the Roman government, etc. I mean, we could go on for hours probably discussing this topic, but I really want to hit this from a Christian perspective. Like, from the Christian side, how did they grow so big? How did they grow so fast? And are there any modern parallels to this? And yes, there is. And maybe we can learn from that. So Christians grew, obviously, because of, number one, that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. You've heard this before, right? So if you heard this before, it's like, okay, yeah, that's obvious. You know, the martyrdom did bring many converts to the church because they saw the dedication and commitment of the Christians. So that was important. They had missionaries, they had evangelists. The people were out there evangelizing and sharing the gospel, sharing Christ with society and with people. So this is not anything unexpected. We expect this type of thing. Now, there are some other things that maybe are less expected, and maybe you've never heard of them before. And if you haven't, now's the time to listen. But before I get to that, I just wanted to mention that I do have a quick guide why I think science points to the creator, in the link down below. You can snag it if you are interested in obtain it for yourself. I'd love to have you. Also, you'll be getting different emails, probably weekly or bi-weekly or monthly. It's not anything more than one per week for sure, and probably closer to monthly email updates on what's going on here at iApologia, the latest posts that you might be interested in. So do check that out down below. Now let's get back to the story of why Christians pretty much not just invaded, if you want, because they were indigenous to the Roman Empire, but why did they take over the whole domain of Rome really quick, within generations, within a few hundred years? Well, the next really important point I really want to aim at is a modern example I was kind of telling you about before. We have an example called the Amish. They're like a Mennonite group. They're a subsidiary of a Mennonite group, or if you want to put it that way. But they are a specific denomination or whatever. But they're not just one denomination. They're multiple. There's just like a whole multiple divisions within the Amish communities. But besides that point, the reason I bring up Amish is because they have a very strong culture, and culture is very important. They're keeping they're keeping a lot of people in the church, and some of this is rightly done, and some of this is more of a cultish type of mentality. It just depends on the Amish group, but I'm just going to lump them all together for now, just for this point. So the point I'm making is the reason why the Amish, the reason I bring up the Amish is because they're growing at a very rapid rate, and this is unexpected. You're like, oh, Amish, they're going to be dying out soon because they are so old-fashioned. They don't have high-tech stuff that we have. But here's the thing that they have: they're not keeping their kids in the church, the Amish community and culture, but they're also having lots of kids. I mean, what the average Amish family maybe has 5-7 kids. So if you have that number of kids, all suddenly you can start seeing where the population growth starts growing crazy. In fact, there's numbers out there. There's estimates between, I think most of the public estimates are around every 20 years, the Amish community doubles in population. But I've talked to people who are local to different Amish groups, and they're telling me that's even faster than that. It's closer to like 16 or 17 years. They are doubling in population. So it's no longer just every 20 years. It's even faster than that. So with you wonder, like, okay, so when are they going to take over the population of the United States? Well, probably in a few hundred years. That's how fast they're growing. Now, what can we learn from this? Well, this is the same idea that the early church, there wasn't necessarily intentional, just like the Amish are not intentionally having large families to take over the population of the United States. The early church was not having large families to intentionally take over the Roman domain. But we can see how they did do it. Now, and we learn something from them. We can have large families, and that's how we can buck the system, is to have large families. And do like the early church did, and the Amish does today, and that is to disciple your kids like crazy. Like, you need to not just teach your kids, but also train your kids with intensity and dedication, and give them a good upbringing. Give them a good, honest upbringing, and not being a hypocrite. Those are really important things. It's not necessarily Sunday school. It's not necessarily all these extra fluff that churches like to throw in on to your family. It's you as a parent is the most important person in your children's life if you want to make the greatest impact. So here's the thing. Jesus had 12 disciples. You don't have to have 12 kids, but if you can disciple 6 kids, 5 kids, 4 kids, 3 kids, 10 kids, whatever the number of kids you have, disciple them like crazy. Become like Jesus. Jesus spent 3 years discipling his. You have 12, 15, 20 years to disciple your kids. You have a lot more time, a lot more, lot closer to your kids. So you have a lot of abilities to learn from Jesus and how to disciple your children. There is one more thing. Well, 2 more, and one I've kind of touched on already, and that is a culture that is a strong culture, a very dedicated, committed culture. And I think that's where we need to, as Christians, need to have a strong, dedicated, committed culture as well. So many times we just capitulate to cultural norms. Oh, the culture spends most of the time gaming, or goes to sports events, or watching TV all day long, or whatever. You fill in the blank. Is that going to move the needle? No. If you just capitulate to the culture, you're not really helping move the needle forward in evangelizing the world. So we see this is that when you're out there actually impacting culture, when you're actively having a good culture so that you can actually impact secular culture, when you're evangelizing, you can also be having kids and evangelizing them and discipling them like crazy, and having a good, solid home life that where you're not a hypocrite, that you can help train your kids. The last item that the early church has that we don't necessarily have today, and it really doesn't matter today, fortunately, it doesn't really affect our culture anymore. But in the ancient Roman culture, there was an acceptance of the father who could pretty much decide if he wanted his child who was just born within the last 7 days or 8 days. If he didn't want his child, he could get rid of his child, much like abortion today, except for instead of the mother, like today, is the father of the olden days. No, they had 7 days or 8 days to decide, and if they didn't want the child, they would just leave the child by the side of the road. And this is fairly common and accepted practice in the ancient Roman world. Maybe not every town did this, but it was somewhat of an accepted practice that people would do. So what would people do with these kids? Well, they would either die on the side of the road, and that's very sad. The next sad thing that could happen is that they could be picked up by some sort of person who would enslave them into all sorts of slavery, which we won't have to get into right now. You can just imagine the types of slavery out there, which we won't have to talk about right now. And lastly, Christians and religious people, like specifically Christians, because they had this mindset of a Christian mindset, a core Christian mindset that human life is valuable. So they would save these kids, and oftentimes these kids might have mental problems, or physical problems. So that was not abnormal. But there's another thing too that was really hideous, is that the Roman culture, like many Eastern cultures and other cultures throughout the world, think that men or boys are more valuable than girls. And this is not a Christian idea at all. Christianity is the opposite. It's like, no, all are valuable in the sight of God. We all have innate value, men, women, boys, girls. It doesn't matter your culture. It doesn't matter your ethnic group. We all are part of the human race, and we all need to be held of great value. So the Christians would rescue these, oftentimes girls, and their groups would grow partially, maybe if it's a small amount, maybe it's just a few here and there. They would grow because of these girls that would come in that they would rescue and raise as their own. So now they had this mass population of girls, or more girls in the church than out in general culture, just because more girls were saved in the church. And so you get guys coming around like, hey, maybe Christianity is not a bad thing after all. They have the girls. So Now that could lead to some negative things as well, but they'll be more likely to like more interested, maybe be more interested in Christianity because of that reason. Now we don't really have that anymore. We do have adoption and stuff like that, but we don't necessarily have, trying to rescue babies. Fortunately, like this is a good thing that our culture does not allow that. But we do have abortion, which is dangerous and hideous, and it's not just dangerous; it's killing people. So, but fortunately, Christians are helping rescue some of those babies. So, as a Christian, what can we do? Well, what's the takeaway from this? Well, we should be growing. We should be the big thing. I think the big takeaway is this: is that if you be a Christian, be a Christian, and that means in all areas. That means in your evangelism and missionary mindset. That means in your own personal life and commitments. You need to be being a strong Christian, knowing what you believe and why you believe what you believe, and be able to have answers, i.e. apologetics. But I think it's more than that. It's like, are you actually making an impact on the emotional side, on the cultural side as well? So make sure you're harnessing those aspects as well, and having a good culture, good relationships, and good place for people to come to as a church, as a family, as a gathering. So you need to design things in that way to make it very inviting to people, but not like capitulating on the issues of the faith. We're not here to make things fun and exciting. That's not the issue. We're not trying to make some sort of show. Never can compete with secular culture, but what you can compete with secular culture on those items is not fight on those items, not compete on those items, but actually compete on the things that Christianity is best. And that is invite them in for music, for singing, for fellowship, for meals, for devotionals. These types of things are very powerful. Bible studies. These things pull people in. And just this one-on-one, genuine, deep connection. That's where you need to be doing. Next is not just culture and the evangelism, but also your kids. You need to be being a honest parent with your life, because your kids can see that you're not honest. Because if you look different on the out in the society versus at home, they will know that. So if you're a hypocrite, that turns kids off faster than anything else. So make sure that you're not a hypocrite for more than one reason, but if nothing else, for your own kids' sake. If you have any other ideas down below, feel free to share them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, look out for my next videos. Love to have you connect with this channel. If you have not liked this video, please like it. Please comment down below. That helps get the algorithm going. And also connect with this channel. If you can follow, it'd be great to have you on board. Love to see what you think of the next video that comes out. Again, comment your thoughts down below. And in the meantime, later.